Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 Twitter handle, and I'm joined as ever by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW. Good morning, Sean.
Morning, Tony. How are we?
I'm okay. Yourself?
I'm all right. I'm okay as well.
I felt better. It's the morning after, the night before, Celtic in the Champions League, match day 1, Celtic 0, Real Madrid 3. We'll get to that in due course. First of all, just draw your attention to the strapline running along the bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe to the Celtic Way. You know what to do. We ask you every day. Hit that subscribe button for top quality journalism covering the club you love. £1 a month for 2 months of full access. We're more than just a pod, aren't we, Sean? We're a website. We've got all sorts of wonderful articles on that. And all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Now, Sean, Celtic lost to the European champions last night, the reigning holders, Real Madrid, 3-0 at Celtic Park. But I think you have to say there was plenty of positives from that to take, was there not?
I think there was, especially the first 25 minutes, first half in general, I think. But for the width of a post and Abada not having his shooting boots on, you'd have went in at half time up, or at least you'd have seen what Real Madrid's response to going behind would have been. I think especially the opening 20 minutes, Tony. Plenty to take from that in terms of, like, I know everybody's using the phrase going toe to toe, going down swinging, all that kind of stuff, but that was Celtic being. I mean, I remember last year in the AZ Alkmaar game, that was the kind of narrative. Oh, Celtic will go down swinging if nothing else, and they'll go toe to toe and see where it takes them, all that kind of stuff. But I said that last year, I thought that was doing Celtic a disservice to compare them to a kind of boxer that just goes slugging and hopes that they land something, because it's a lot more calculated than that.
Yeah.
And I think you saw the calculation in it in the opening 20 minutes, especially. Thereafter, not quite as much, but it was still there when the opportunity arose. Some of the interplay in that opening period of the game was superb, and Real Madrid did look as if they were a bit shocked by it, the quality that they were facing. Now, obviously, after that, especially after half-time, the game changed, and Real Madrid's quality started to shine through as well. We'll come to the first goal, I'm sure, to talk about that. I'm sure people have got opinions on the first goal and maybe all three of the goals. And obviously, after the half, Maeda missing that chance, liking that to the two Abada ones, and the McGregor hitting the post. So Celtic, as I said in my tweet after the game, which was just kind of early thoughts after full time, no like stats or anything like that. It was just my own impression. There's plenty to be positive about. But it is disappointing because, if anything, because you had the chances. But don't forget that Celtic had the chances. They created the chances, is what I would say.
World-class players do world-class things, Sean. It's no disgrace to go down to a world-class team. And as you say, all those kind of phrases, they went down swinging. But I think I based my colour piece on the fact that the Celtic fans cheered Celtic at the end. They fell in love with their team all over again, because that they've now created a template and a benchmark for how they're going to play in Europe. And I think they were delighted to see them take Real Madrid to at least 55 minutes before they broke them down, and give them a scare at the same time, and play, as you say, and as Anne says, our brand of football for that first half. And I think Real Madrid were shocked. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened had Celtic gone ahead in the game, to see how they would have responded to that. But again, it's the harsh and clinical lesson in taking your chances when they come along. And we've said that for a while, but I don't think anybody who was there last night would be disheartened by Celtic's performance, Sean. It's probably, and it seems a strange thing to say, but it's probably the best I've felt about a 3-0 home defeat in Europe.
You're not the first comment to say this. Dave Ferguson comes in and says that as well. Obviously, the comment I had up there said Kennedy says not disheartened.
That template is the fact that they see this team heading in the right direction and playing the way Ange Postecoglou said he would play. And now it's a learning curve. Celtic. He wants Celtic to be a European force on a repetitive basis. So if they can bring that to the table against Real Madrid, we spoke off air, and I said to you, would playing like that have beaten the majority of teams in Europe last night in the Champions League? I think in the first half, certainly, I think it would have.
Going to put Sean Malloy's comment up. Proud of their efforts and some positive signs moving forward, but a dose of reality might be no bad thing. Now, I would take that, and I would almost use that as a silver lining, because you do learn more in a defeat, arguably, than you do in victory. But it gives. Ange Postecoglou summed it up himself yesterday after the game when he said that they didn't learn something that they didn't already know, that you need to take your chances, because sometimes even domestically he's been saying, and that's why I used the word profligate the other week, that, remember? That kind of thing. Sometimes that rears its head for Celtic, that they create enough chances but just don't finish them. And if nothing else, the silver lining for Ange Postecoglou when he goes in and they're dissecting this game is, you did create the chances, but this is another lesson where I've been telling you need to put them away if you get them. And if nothing else, it's Real Madrid at home. Were people expecting? There was a fair bit of confidence, but not necessarily expecting Celtic to win. So he almost has this as a free lesson, and don't do it against the lesser teams in the group. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not going to be judging this group by the games against Real Madrid. The four that are coming next are where you'll be judged, and ultimately where you'll finish in this group. So, but I think it was a decent showing, and I loved the fact that he actually said, he was asked about optimism, and he said, "I'm not optimistic, I'm determined."
Aye,
I love that, Sean. I really, and I think a lot of Celtic supporters felt the same way too. Yeah, they felt optimistic, but they were determined to see Ange continue and the team continue to play like that in Europe. It's a long time since Celtic have played like that in Europe, and made things difficult for a top class team, the likes of Real Madrid. So it's a harsh and it's a clinical lesson in taking your chances, but I think, and I said in my colour piece too, that if any team can learn from it, Sean, it's Ange Postecoglou's team. It's this Celtic team.
Aye. As I say, there's plenty. I said there's in my kind of post-match tweet, there was plenty of things to be proud of, and that I thought Postecoglou would see that. In that pride, there will obviously be opportunities to learn, because, as I say, they might have created the chances, but what he said after it stands true, that they knew already they would need to take them. They didn't take them. Real Madrid took the first of theirs, which I'm sure we'll come to, because I've put a comment highlighted about it. And thereafter, it was slightly different. Now, obviously, when I dig into the stats and stuff, it is going to say Real Madrid had more of the ball, passed it more, just in general, all that kind of stuff. But I still think that there was plenty of positives there. And that's not even making allowances for the fact that it's European champions. I just mean in general, the performance for the most part was Champions League level.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, correct that. I agree with that. Now, okay, who played well for you on the night, Sean?
Right, okay. I thought Callum McGregor, obviously. I thought he played well. I thought all three of the midfielders played well.
So did
the starting midfielders. I thought Real Hatate was 100% long ball. Those raking crossfield passes, loves them,
brilliant, aren't they?
And he pulled them off as well, which is the key.
Against Real Madrid.
Callum McGregor was just
basically
his usual self, but against Real Madrid in the Champions League.
Yeah.
I thought Matt O'Reilly was good off the ball. I thought he was particularly good as well. He topped Celtic, topped the match for pressing and counter pressing. He didn't have any key passes, Tony, which isn't like him. But it wasn't from the want of trying. He still get passes into the box and stuff. It just wasn't necessarily the kind of ruthless passing. But I thought all three of them played well. I thought Josip Juranovic had a good game, Tony. I know that the first goal, and if there's been a few comments about it already, we'll come to that. I thought in general he had a good game. Up against probably Real's best player last night, Vinicius Junior.
Yeah.
You'll probably come to Greg Taylor because you mentioned him in the match ratings. Again, when we come to that first goal, I'll mention the guy I brought up with Guillaume Balaguer, Fede Valverde, because I see that coming, just the way that we're going to use him. Frankly, I don't think anybody had a really poor game, put it that way.
No.
I think you might be about to mention him, but maybe Jota's defensive work wasn't up to scratch.
I mentioned to you off there,
maybe never had a great game, but Leila Bada only got a half. You don't know what they've done after half time. Obviously, he missed 2 chances in the first half, but I don't think anybody had a rotten game, put it that way.
No, I think they all acquitted themselves well enough, Sean, against a team of that calibre. Helen Feek's captain for Tasha, an awesome game. Yeah, I thought he was terrific. But someone saying Valverde is a player on the retro Celtic, of course. But excuse me. The reason I mentioned we were talking about Greg Taylor off here was that was for me. I think Jota's defensive duty last night wasn't exactly a dereliction of duty, but I thought at times Taylor was struggling to cope with 2 of them coming at him. He could have, tucked in a bit more and gave him a bit more help. Again, that's something that we'll maybe address moving forward. But, Celtic did have their chances, Sean. We've spoken about them. And, and Real Madrid were clinical when they got theirs. First goal, Juranovic has made a decision to go, hasn't he? And he's.
I
think it's due to the move that we spoke about.
It was a move. It was the fact that obviously it eventually comes to Valverde, as we kind of spoke about with Guillem. I really like Valverde. I think he's an Ange player, to be honest with you. He's relentless. He was still running about as if he hadn't been playing in the 90th minute. But it comes actually from Thibaut Courtois staying calm under Dyson Maida's pressure initially. Taylor pushes up onto Carvajal, so the centre-backs will shuffle across. And that means that there is that space over there, but Juranovic has got to come across at least a wee bit. Modric, we're still back at that bit. Modric lofts the ball. And it's a decent pass, but Valverde's kind of athleticism turns it into an impromptu 1-2 with Hazard, who probably didn't know much about the 1-2, to be honest. It was a heavy touch, and Valverde just takes it and goes. But when you look at it back, the reason that Juranovic comes so far across is because he checks where Vinicius is. He knows that he's there. But then he spots Carvajal trying to come through the middle, and it distracts him enough that he goes, don't know what one to go for. Chooses Carvajal, and Valverde goes to the back post like he did in the Champions League final, and Vinicius slots it in. So
the interchange with Hazard and Valverde, wasn't it? Takes Jens and Carter Vickers.
As I say, like they'd already shuffled across, just where they should have shuffled across. Because when Taylor goes to Carvajal, they've got to shuffle across. But again, for me, it's not so much that they've done anything wrong. Maybe Juranovic made the wrong decision with that, but before that, I don't necessarily think they've done it wrong. It was Valverde's athleticism turned that into a 1-2 that wasn't really on when he tried it. If you know what I mean, he kind of flicked it round the defender. And Hazard takes a poor touch, essentially, and Valverde just says, no, it's a 1-2, I'm taking that. He just goes. And you can't leave that space. But I don't think it was I think it was Real's individual quality rather than Celtic's big mistake. He did choose to go and let Carvajal distract him. But because everybody had been pulled across, really, what was he going to do? He was going to lose it one way or the other.
Sure. And also, the game was killed stone dead, Sean, about 4 minutes later. Celtic losing 2 goals in 4 minutes with Luka Modric, who did what Luka Modric does with the wee kind of bender side foot.
I thought Jens got a tackle in it, and then he got his foot to it, but it landed back at Modric again. So I think Joe Hart got a good hand to it, but not a good enough hand. And it just it just went past him. But he loves the outside of that foot, Modric.
He does. He loves it. But he's terrific at it, and he got a standing ovation by Celtic supporters. Sean, the appreciation of a decent player. But sometimes you just hold your hands up and say, he's a world class footballer.
The third goal. I mean, they did this a few times with I actually thought Toni Kroos, his performance will maybe go underrated, but I've seen Haggerty likes a crossfield pass. He loves one as well. And Stuart Ross in his scouting report basically said exactly that. He will go for that pass if they can, raking it over to Valverde, raking it over to Carvajal, and that's obviously where they get the third from. That it was his pass over to Carvajal, laid it back, and Hazard had a tap in. So again, 3-0. I do think it wasn't a 3-goal game.
Yeah.
I think even when you look at the underlying stats and stuff, you probably find it should have been 2-1 or something. It should have been a closer game. Real, good value for their win in the end. And you never know how it's going to pan out if Celtic score in the first half. But overall, with the way the whole 90 minutes went, Real good value for it. I think 3-0 was probably a bit much. Probably 2-1 would have been probably more accurate. But again, I think when if I was going to sum it up, Tony, and I don't know if you would disagree, but if I was going to sum it up, you would say Real kept the ball more effectively, finished more clinically, had I think probably 4 or 5 of the best chances, Maida's the honourable exception.
Mm-hmm.
And from a Celtic point of view, first 20 minutes were definitely Celtics, and I don't just mean they edged it. I mean it was actually Celtics. They edged the first 40 because I think in the second part of the first half, Real come back into it just before half time, especially, and then after half time, all 3 of Real's goals, almost 2/3 of their kind of total XG in the second half. So, without using the phrase "a game of 2 halves," because that's I do think it applies here.
Toni Kroos and Luka Modric are supposed to be advancing in years, but they can still kick it, Sean. You know, you're sure exactly why they're champions of Europe, because they have players like that who can hurt you. Modric is a class act, of course, but I think you say there you hesitate to mention a game of 2 halves, but Celtic did give it a go, Sean. They gave it a fair go, especially in that first half, and showed that, you know, bearing in mind this was Celtic's first Champions League group game in 5 years under a new manager playing a different style, but they showed that given time and given, you know, the chance to compete at that level on a continual basis, they will claim scalps, I think, if they can play like that in future matches and in the years to come by qualifying, as Anne says, on a repetitive basis. They showed that it can be successful because they created chances against the best club side in the world, didn't take them. But again, that's the biggest lesson that they'll have to learn from last night.
I think obviously when we were talking to Guillaume to preview it, and I kind of raised the fact that although they'd won every game, they had conceded in every game.
Yeah.
And did that mean that Celtic could go into it thinking we will create chances and stuff? So I think it would have been more disappointing if they just never created any chances.
Yeah.
Obviously, the disappointing aspect now is that they created them and didn't take them, but they still created them. And I know I've said that a couple of times already, but it is what I would like to focus on with it, because it's a stark difference between not creating something at all, getting beat 3-0, but creating a few good chances and getting beat because you never took them. That's a different type of lesson you take from it, and I think it's a more positive lesson.
I think Celtic showed that kind of football can yield success, Sean. So that was my biggest takeaway from that. I wasn't too despondent, and like the manager said, I think you're more determined now to put it right in the games against RB Leipzig and Shakhtar.
Speaking of Shakhtar, next up.
Yep.
And they beat Leipzig 4-1 last night with a double from a certain Marian Shved, Tony.
Yes.
And it's led to Domenico Tedesco getting sacked as Leipzig manager. So
I think they've pushed the panic button because they realise a double header against Celtic could be crucial to their chances of qualifying or not from the group.
Well, it will be. It definitely will be, aye.
So I think that's exactly what they've done. A no dream return to Celtic Park for, as you said, off air, Andrews Hinkle, Sean.
Yep, aye, he's gone as well. He was one of the coaches, aye. But I mean, Paul Lambert had told us we had kind of, when we looked into it ourselves a wee bit, and just in general, it was well known Leipzig were not playing that well. I mean, they get knocked out of the Europa League end of last season by Rangers, so therefore by that kind of logic, you're thinking, well, Celtic should be able to give them at least a go. And this season, not started well at all. Lost the Super Cup to Bayern Munich, which is Bayern Munich. After that, only one win in the first 5 Bundesliga games. Beat a kind of a smaller team in the German Cup, and then obviously beat 4-1 in the first Champions League game. So I'd imagine it was probably coming. But nonetheless, there maybe is an element of the panic button to it with this double header coming up. Yeah,
indeed. Anything else? Takeaways from that, Sean, last night? Are you still?
I could go on for ages. I mean, I've been doing the data roundup later on, and so I've already got a couple of notes from that and a couple of notes from last night and stuff like that. But again, I don't know if it's. I mean, I'm naturally cynical, Tony. You know, I'm quite cynical in general, right? But I'm not. Last night, it's very much the way. I don't know if I just like to bob if somebody leaves. I like to just kind of contrary sometimes. But same as when Celtic get knocked out of the Europa League, the group stages last year. I know they get beat after being in an advantageous decision and get beat over in Leverkusen. It was 3-2 and stuff like that. But I still came out writing my reflective piece after that, saying this is a net positive. The experience, the way that they've learned, the kind of things that they learn, you'll see it next season, all that kind of stuff. And I tend to think the same about last night. Obviously, you'll see it a lot quicker because there's another Champions League game this coming Wednesday, and it's all kind of condensed into this. You'll see it in the next 7 weeks or something. But I'm still overall, even looking at the underlying data, still quite positive about it.
Yep. I tell you what, I do want to see, Sean. I'd like to see more of Haksabanovic.
Yep, I think you might see him on Saturday, Tony.
Yeah, I think he's a real silver lining in the cameos that he's had so far. Looks really lively. He's tested the goalkeeper. He's looked to get involved. And yeah, I'd like to see more of him and see what he can produce. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him on Saturday in the starting lineup. Speaking of that, your old dad got it spot on, Sean.
He did 11 out of 11, and I'll tell you what, 11 out of 11, mate, you might as well send in a CV for the Chelsea job because they've just sacked Thomas Tuchel, Tony. They've just sacked him as of like 20 minutes ago.
Yes, indeed. I always say it's just pure luck if you get 11 out of 11. But yeah.
Helen Freak's coming in saying it as well. Chelsea sacked Tuchel.
Yeah.
James Livingston, Chelsea can keep away from Ange.
Well,
yep. I think that might have been on the cards as well, the Tuchel one, Tony. But
yeah, of course. But yes, I don't worry about our manager. He seems perfectly happy where he is.
Oh no, that's not what I'm getting at. No, but that was that wee comment there. Or in other words, as David Ferguson says, capital letters. Andrew's going nowhere.
We've got the exclamation marks there, David. You know what I mean? And just going nowhere! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! But yeah, you wake up this morning and yeah, it's sore because you've lost, but there are plenty of positives to reflect on, and you do. The caveat is you were playing Real Madrid.
I suppose so. I mean, I noticed Ange deliberately kind of went out of his way to make sure there wasn't a caveat like that, but ultimately that is a caveat as it's European champions. But I think in times last night I thought it was either right pass, wrong finish, or right man, wrong pass sometimes. But either way, as I keep saying, they did create chances, and that's the overriding positive I would take from it.
Yeah, I mean we can't get away from that. That they're retro Celtic. They're all always a learning curve for our young team, Sean. Yeah, I guess so. But like the manager said, it's made them more determined. So the learning curve starts in the next game, Sean.
Yep.
You have to learn immediately.
Andrew Galea, we know the football we play works. That's the fundamental message. It might not have worked for the full 90 minutes last night, but it nonetheless it did work on the Champions League stage for enough of a period of time where you should have had at least one goal. So again, it's about doing it against Shakhtar now, and this is actually, I suppose you could argue, where the pressure will come into it, because it's not Real Madrid. It's someone you probably are expected to beat.
But this was always going to be the pressure game, Sean.
Yeah.
Real Madrid, you took what you can get against Real Madrid. Anything you got was a bonus. The pressure game, the pressure games were always going to be Shakhtar and the double header against RB Leipzig, wasn't it? To see where you're going to shape up in the group or not.
Yep. I mean, I remember saying to you yesterday, Tony, that I was intrigued to see, and it also says it in that preview with Guillaume Balaguer, that when he asked us what about Celtic, where can Real get at them and stuff, and I'd says about the passing out from the back, Jens holding on to it too long, says to you yesterday, and Carter Vickers would, when he's pressured, maybe not doing it quite as effectively. But last night, I actually thought the two of them did well with their passing when they get the opportunity. And I know a lot of the time that was maybe because Real didn't necessarily press them so intensely. But I do think that the two of them did well. I'm going to have a wee closer look at it, I think, after I've done the data roundup and maybe look at them, because I took a few notes and there was one or two occasions where, again, I thought Jens was holding on to it too long before releasing it. Because last night, I think you've seen early release was key to getting Celtic a wee chance up the other end of the park. But he did have a couple of really good moments as well. So I might have a wee closer look at that.
I thought Maurice Jens had some really good interceptions, and he read the game very, very well. But it was just the goal where he got dragged out of position, where he shunted across, hasn't he? And both of them were taken out, so you marry it up with that. But that's what good teams do to you. They expose your deficiencies at times. But
he had one interception and one tackle. He had, but Mr. Callum McGregor had 2 tackles and 5 interceptions. Nobody beat him for interceptions last night, Tony.
That's why he was the best Celtic player in the park. Yep. Well, I thought all the midfielders were very good, in their own way. And for the time that Haggerty and O'Reilly spent on the park, I think when they left the park, they were spent.
Aye, I mean that's the benefit of almost having people in reserve that you can say that you are only going to be on for 70 minutes or whatever. Yeah. So give us it all for your 70 and come off after that. But I think all three of the midfielders turned up, put it that way. Which also, I mean, we're saying Real kept the ball better. Modric was outstanding. Tony Kroos was outstanding. But I still think all that can be true, and Celtic's midfield can have played well.
Play well, yeah. I agree with it. Well, that's the game I watched. So, but opinions, isn't it? Some people might watch a different game, but certainly there's cause for optimism, Sean. That's basically what I'm saying. But the manager is determined to make sure that Celtic do learn the lessons of not taking their chances at this level, and hopefully they can address that against Shakhtar.
Yep, there's a mini debate going on in the comments here. Abada did have chances. Just think if Celtic kept him on till 65-70 minutes. Edward of Oz saying Maida was as technical as a bull in a china shop. But Robert Heinlein pointing out that Maida might have scored the chances that Abada missed, obviously vice versa as well. I think with Maida's, it did come fizzing across at him, and we know he's not technically the kind of the highest calibre. But I think if he'd been on a wee bit longer, maybe had more touches, he maybe would have finished it. But nonetheless, it was a sitter.
It's still
I do think. I said to you last night, the Abada one's stuck in the head for me a wee bit more. The Maida one was more of a sitter, right enough. But I just feel Jota's pass was outstanding to release Abada, and I think he went to pieces a wee bit with his wee shot. I think he bottled it a wee bit, but. First half, that first shot, Tony, I think Giakoumakis, if he just doesn't realise that his defenders
slapped the defender,
his defender's been slapped, because he should, he would have wanted to have had the shot if he knew that. And it was a really good layoff, kind of poor attempt, but it was a good layoff from Giakoumakis. He also laid it off for Callum McGregor for his shot that hit the post. So we've not really mentioned Giakoumakis, but I think he did a decent game. Without ever really threatening to score, I think he had a good game.
I think he caused Milito all sorts of problems, didn't he? He never appeared for the second half, but I
think it was his hamstring, was it?
He came an absolute chasing. He put him in a battle that he didn't want to be in, and it was just great all-round centre-forward play when Celtic occasionally looked for the out ball with Giakoumakis. He was a willing runner, and he gave him a hard time, and I don't think Milito was actually prepared for that. I don't think he thought it'd be that kind of game. But so I, as you say, I think Giakoumakis was decent without actually being goal threatening, which you hope would be the other way around. You'd prefer him to be goal threatening rather than,
True. But I do think he played his part. I think he had a good game without threatening to score, as I say, but done well. He done well. I like Kaiser's comment here. Real Madrid were forced to be outstanding. I like that. Okay. Chilwell, I prefer Yates to Starfelt. I've seen a lot of that kind of sentiment last night in the aftermath. What I will say is Yates is doing nothing to get himself taken out of that team.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I realise we talked about getting dragged over and different things, and obviously there was the Ross County goal where he kind of switched off and stuff, but so far, I think there is a case to be made that he's challenging Starfelt.
Yeah, indeed. I would go along with that. I agree with yourself in the fact that I think he's a good distributor of the ball, but I think he just maybe needs to be quicker to play the way that
That's what I think. I think he
wants.
carries it slightly too long.
He can be guilty of that, but I think sitting beside Carter Vickers will help him. He'll get a handle on it.
Carter Vickers himself played a couple of really good balls
Yeah.
last night, specifically to Juranovic. I think it was around about 41st, 42nd minute.
Yeah.
And he got 2 crosses out of it. And it was because we know that they're zipping it right into each other's feet now anyway. But Carter Vickers did, he zipped it right to Juranovic and took out a couple of players and they got a cross in front of it. So, as I say, when they're pressured, naturally it's not necessarily as quick or as accurate. But I still see signs of positivity with that kind of stuff building out for the back and all that. John Curry, look at how far we've come since the start of last season. Incredible. Tony, I'm going to outlaw that because we've been saying it already. I don't want to hear it again. It's obvious. It's just. I says to my dad yesterday, I'm not going to say it, but I actually feel it today that this is when you would say, as John said, this is when you would say, well, think of it a year ago. But after the day, we're not saying it again. It's
okay. Well, let's just say that Celtic, after that performance last night, seemed to be heading in the right direction, Sean.
Yes.
You having that?
I'm having that, definitely, aye. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Cool. We shall reconvene tomorrow, guys. Thanks for your comments. Sadly, it's not a wonderful Wednesday, but Celtic put up a good show. They came out swinging, Sean, didn't they?
Yep.
As the manager said.
They did. And as I say, the boxing analogy, I'll go there again. It's not just a slugger. They played their own thing. They tried to impose their own style, all that kind of stuff. That's the main takeaway for me. Might not have worked for 90 minutes, but don't forget they did create the chances.
But they were up against world-class opposition, and they're not playing world-class opposition in every fixture in this group. It's still up for grabs. Celtic can land blows on RB Leipzig and Shakhtar playing this way, Sean. I think we're both convinced of that, aren't we?
Yep, we'll see. First up, Livy. Let's not forget.
First up, Livy, indeed. But we'll preview that in the coming days. Guys, thanks for your comments. David Ferguson sums it up. Sends it up, boys. We're going places. We'd like to think so. Sean, thanks for your contribution again. Always first class. Thanks for the comments, guys. It's a sore one, but we take our medicine, take our dumps, and we move on to the next one, which is Livingston on Saturday, and we'll be here to preview it in the coming days. All the best. Have a good day, troops. Take care.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, guys.